Hey world, you are here for Litvak Leadership Live, running from one meeting to another. Let me get all my stuff together. And I am here with my new good friend, Alan Howie. I heard Alan speak virtually recently about marketing. And when I heard him talking, I was like, he needs to be on the show. So Alan, welcome to Litvak Leadership Live.
Thank you, Sean. Glad to be here.
Alan was and I had spoken before, and Alan has written a book, The Marketing Minute, available on Amazon. Let me tell you, I've read 10 pages because I wanted to have some flavor. And when I opened up the book last night, said, okay, I'm going to read 10 pages of this. All of a sudden, I realized that this is a daily marketing devotional. And as I read the first 10 pages, I realized that there is so much rich information here. It just blew my mind. So many thought-provoking ideas. So where did you get the wherewithal and organization to sit down and put this together? Let's start there.
All right. So the Marketing Minute started and continues as a weekly email that goes out. Back in 2006, I think we started it. And the format was a little bit different then. Every week we would send an email that had 4 kind of little ideas, a couple of sentences, and then just a conversation starter at the end. After several years of that, I realized really I never get enough. I don't want to make the email longer, but I need to dig a little bit deeper into some of these things. And so around 2015, I realized, we've been at this quite some time now. We probably have kind of enough for a greatest hits compilation. And that's really what Marketing Minute, the book, is pulling some of those together, separating them into chapters based on what they're about. So branding or sales or whatever it might be. And then setting them up exactly as you described, as a marketing devotional, a daily marketing devotional. So you can open it up every weekday of the calendar year and look at that day's page and read the idea, write down if that affects your business and how and what you might do about it, and have something to tackle that day or add to your list.
And it is just so rich with information. So what drew you into marketing?
I kind of came in through the back door. I started out as a graphic design person in college, but really I can trace my marketing path to 2 things.
Okay.
One is when I was pretty young, I loved to draw. My mom asked me to make a sign. So I'm one of 8 kids, 6 of whom are boys, 1 bathroom. So she asked me to make a sign for the back of the toilet that said, "We aim to please, you aim to please." As you can imagine, with 6 boys.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did that, and I drew an aerial view of a toilet with a target painted in the bowl and put those words on there. And I still actually have that. So I just kind of just had a lot of fun doing that. Get to college, first day of first graphic design class. We had this curmudgeonly kind of a professor, and all the graphic design rooms were at one end of this art building. There was fine arts at the other end. And the first thing he says is, if you're here because you imagine yourself as an artist, you're at the wrong end of the building. He said, at the other end of the building, they paint, they sculpt, they draw, and they're all very good. He said, at this end of the building, we sell shit. And really, that started me out because I thought, I love that idea that what we're doing has a purpose.
Okay.
And so from there, it was just one thing led to another. I found myself in banking for a few years and didn't start in the marketing department, but ended up there. And then went to work for an agency down here in the Louisville area for a few years and really got just kind of my own vision for what that could be. And so 24 years ago in May, started Idealogy and been at it ever since.
Wow. Wow. That is just amazing. So what was the catalyst of you going out on your own?
Um, it takes a particular matching of personalities to work closely with somebody day in and day out. And the agency that I worked for, we just kind of had a different idea of where we wanted to go, and I felt like we could trust ourselves to be more creative, and our clients would trust us to be more creative and bring them better ideas. And I think the prevailing attitude was, we know what our clients will accept. Let's not push that envelope. And so at some point, that I think just kind of reached just an impasse. And I remember it was so funny because it was early April, and we had our first daughter was just months old at the time. And so I came home, was talking to my wife about it, and I said, truly, if it weren't for us having the baby, I'd just start my own shop today.
Okay.
And she said, when is it going to be a better time? When is it going to be easier? And that was just a very thought-provoking question. She said, do you think it'll be easier when the baby is 2 years old or when we have another one? And I thought, okay. And so that was the first week of April. And by the first week in May, we were up and running.
Wow. So wait,
Yeah.
so within a month, boom,
Yeah.
you're up and running. And this is 23 years ago.
Yeah.
So what did up and running mean?
We had right out of the gate, we had a client that was on a retainer that basically kept us from starving.
Okay.
So I thought, all right, that's 60% of what I need to make in a month just to keep us going. All I've got to do is go out and find the other 40%. And fortunately, by then, I had kind of made connections in this area and had let some people know. I used that month to let people know what I was up to. And I had enough people who told me, if you ever start your own shop, we'll follow you, that I reached out to them. And in fact, I remember I didn't even have time to worry or stress about it until my last day on the old job.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I had a moment of panic. I thought, what have I done? I'm just jumping off a cliff here. And I already had everything set up. The first year was out of my home. So I get home, and we had an answering machine set up with a separate business line, and the light was flashing. So I hit the button, and it was one of the local hospitals calling to say, hey, we've got a project we'd like you to help us with. It was a joint venture with TARC and another organization. Any chance you can come see us Monday morning? And I thought, well, that's a sign from the universe that this is all just going to work out fine.
This is going to be good.
Yeah, and it has ever since.
That is amazing. The first time I heard of your organization was you'd gotten a billboard somewhere, and you were having some kind of conference, and I want to say it was, and this is probably in the last 5 years. It was like an idea conference. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we've done a couple of things. We've done an out of the box day, which is typically we gather together no more than probably 15 or 20 businesses. And so it's the marketing folks from those businesses. And sometimes the owners show up, and it could be a for-profit, non-for-profit. The only criteria is we don't allow more than one of any kind of business in there. So we wouldn't have two banks or two, hospitals. And we really just spend that day talking about and then working through how you build really effective marketing. And they all have marketing already, but how you make every piece of that marketing more effective, how you determine what's working and what's not, how you do more of the stuff that's working, that kind of thing. Then the one that you're thinking about might be something that we were going to offer for nonprofits. And because I think we did have a billboard up about that, if I remember right. And COVID kind of killed that for us. So
Okay.
we're looking at revisiting that. The other thing that we do is we have a ongoing thing called Brews and Brands.
Yes, which I am waiting for that to start up and for my invite.
So plan on April. It looks like we're going to be ready in April. We are tentatively scheduled to be, if all things COVID stay where they are or improve, we will probably be upstairs at Monarch in Germantown. I'll make sure that you get an invitation.
Thank you.
And that just was born of a friend of mine named Jeremy Frankforther from PNC Bank, who is a consummate salesperson. He's maybe the best salesperson I know, only because he just doesn't sell anything. You know what I mean? He just sees himself as a guy who helps people,
Yes.
and so it changes everything about how he approaches that. And so we would get together every few weeks, have a beer, talk about kind of what we were doing, share suggestions and ideas, brainstorm. And one of us, depending on who tells the story, that changes every time. Ask the question, wouldn't it be great if there was just a group of people that got together once a month and did this? Just have a beer or a glass of wine, whatever it is, have casual, relaxed conversations. And we just kind of stared at each other for a second and thought, let's give it a whirl. And so we did. And again, it had really taken off. And then COVID stepped in, and we tried to do it virtually for probably 2 months. And, that kind of thing loses all its energy over Zoom. It just, you just can't keep that. The ideas don't flow as rapidly, and it just wasn't as great. Yeah. So we thought, let's table it for now. I'm probably still in touch with everybody who was attending, and we'll just try it again once this settles down a little bit. So I think we're very close.
I think we're closer than close. I was at a hybrid meeting yesterday for the Women of Commercial Real Estate, the group you had spoken to before. They had a hybrid meeting yesterday. And another organization that I'm a part of, the Louisville chapter of IFMA, we're having our first hybrid meeting in April. So, people are out. I'm out meeting people professionally. And it's just a matter of getting people back into downtown Louisville. But, manufacturing and all other industries are up and running. So tell us about your 3-step process. The ideology, can I speak? 3-step process of find your difference, craft your message, deploy and deliver. So
of those things, I would say the first one is the hardest for everybody. Because if you let's use banks as an example, a poor example probably, in the sense that every bank does exactly the same thing, right? Checking accounts, savings accounts, commercial loans, personal loans, all that stuff, IRAs, you name it. They deliver them in the same way. You've got drive-through windows, ATMs, ITMs, online banking, right? All that stuff. So for a bank, that is almost an impossible question to answer, is how are we different? And when you talk to anybody who is in charge of a bank, they'll say, our people are just the best. But the problem with that is when you go to the next bank down the road, they will say exactly the same thing.
Yep.
And they'll be sincere. They'll absolutely mean it. But unfortunately, that means that they're all saying the same thing. So, but there are businesses out there that have a meaningful difference either in what they offer or the way they offer it. So in that first space, we try to help them find what makes them different from everybody else. And I'll give you an example. So colonoscopies. Nobody wants a colonoscopy. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to think about it. But a colonoscopy does something incredibly valuable, because colon cancer is one of the top 3 deadliest cancers in the United States. Interestingly, it's also the most preventable.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, other cancers are not preventable as such, colon cancer is preventable. That's what a colonoscopy is. They are looking for polyps that are precancerous that they can remove and keep you free from colon cancer. We had a client, Gastroenterology of Southern Indiana, a very glamorous, glitzy name, and they had two advantages that set them apart, in our mind anyway. One of them was they did what they did at an extremely high level. So what that meant was they found and removed more potentially cancerous polyps than anybody else. There's actually a measure of that, and they scored so high that the Mayo Clinic sent a team here to Southern Indiana to study them to see how they were doing it, because they said, your results are as good as or better than ours, and we want to know how you do it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they're doing top-notch work. The other thing is that this team of doctors, and they had a great sense of humor. And this will shock you, but all doctors don't.
Yeah.
But I think maybe to be in that profession, you better have a sense of humor.
Better have a sense of humor. You're not looking at any pretty part at that moment, you know?
You're not. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that you bound out of bed, out the door, the song in your heart.
Gonna go. Oh, okay.
And yet I feel like they do. So they let us take a different path. Instead of the usual medical marketing, we would create ads for them. And this is where sort of that second part comes in. Since we knew the difference, these ads would say things like, the headline would be, "It's not exactly a picnic for us either." Or, "We boldly go where no one's gone before."
Ah, there you go.
You know, that kind of thing. And so,
do women laugh at those jokes? I see men laughing at that, but do women laugh at that?
Absolutely. I think there is less differentiation than we think sometimes between what men and women find funny. And where you'll see that most is if you watch any of the like Netflix stand-up comedy stuff, when they show the crowd, typically, unless the joke is really skewed one way or the other, men and women are laughing at the same things. And women are as likely to get colon cancer as men. Women are more likely to take care of their own health than men. And they're likely to be the ones who make sure that men are taking care of their health. So
sure.
It had broad appeal. And then once we got their attention with those kinds of headlines, that's where in the copy we could talk about, here's what colon cancer is and does, but here's what we do to make sure you don't have to worry about it. You know, we'll keep you comfortable. We'll keep you at ease and relaxed. We'll answer all your questions. We're really good at that. And their patient volume increased to the extent that they had to add staff to accommodate it. But it all went back to finding that difference, because without that, we didn't have a message. All right, there was nowhere else to go. Now, let's go back to that bank problem for just a second. If you're a bank and you don't have a meaningful difference, then your message sure better be different.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how you're going to make yourself different. And the biggest example you'll see about this, Sean, is if you watch television at all, you'll see Progressive, Geico, Allstate, State Farm, Farmers, all insurance companies, all in exactly the same business, all creating really memorable advertising and marketing that really makes them stand out. If I say to you, what are you wearing, Jake from State Farm? You know that commercial, right?
You know that commercial, absolutely.
Yeah. And I've literally been in workshops where I'll ask that question and everybody in the room says khakis. And so,
it's true.
Yeah. So, Mayhem from Allstate, right?
Yeah.
Flow from Progressive. The whole Farmers, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So each one of them is using a really different way to sort of carve out a niche for themselves, whether it's the whole price thing, with Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance, to the we cover everything kind of approach that Farmers has, with all these bizarre things they've covered. So it can certainly be done.
Okay.
And that's when you're in a business that you say, well, my shop I'm a salon like every other salon, or I'm a whatever it is. Then the marketing message itself has to be so different and so unique that it just really stands out.
Well, and that reminds me of Jesse Cole, the owner of the Savannah Bananas in Savannah, Georgia. And he's gone viral all over online. He's the man in the yellow tuxedo. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yep.
And he has created an experience around minor league baseball that, frankly, makes the Louisville Bats look boring.
Right.
And the Louisville Bats, I love my Bats. I love the ballpark, but I want to go to Savannah to go to a Bananas game.
Absolutely. And so that's the thing. Marketing hinges on two things, and there's a whole bunch we're in a golden age right now in the last few years for market research that shows what works and what doesn't. And there are two things that we know you have to have for people to remember you and choose you. The first is enough repetition to stick in their memory, right? So you have to make enough impressions on them, however you do that, to stay in their brain, because that's our brains work on a cumulative basis, right? Each impression kind of adds a link in a chain. And if you leave too much room between impressions, the chain gets broken, and it's just like starting all over again. So when people say, well, why does so-and-so advertise? Why does this company, they have a commercial on every night? Well, there's a reason for that, because they want you to remember that. So that's one half of it. And then the other half is the creativity piece that we've kind of been talking about here, which really boils down to making your message different enough that it will stick and build those memory chains. Here in the Louisville market, whether you like them or whether you really dislike them, Daryl Isaac's billboards do their job, because he latched onto this hammer idea and has just driven it 90 miles an hour on outdoor, on television. Really, those are the two places you see it mostly. But it really separates him from all of the other attorneys that are out there, that have billboards that say injured, or accident, or any of those things, right? If you ask 100 people in Louisville, who's an attorney you would call if you were injured in an accident, I'm betting you over 90% would say Daryl Isaacs. That's the hammer. That's the
hammer.
Yeah. The hammer, because it's easy to remember, right? He made it easy to remember.
Yeah. So okay. So there's find a difference. There's craft your message. Now, how do you deploy and deliver?
So I am media agnostic. I don't believe that any one medium has an advantage over any other medium. It's just a delivery method, right? A medium is just a delivery device for what I'm trying to get to somebody. So the answer to that question really depends on who your audience is and what you're trying to sell to them. And so here's an example, because you might approach the same person two different ways depending on what you're selling. If I'm selling a business-to-business service or product, for that matter, I know that I ideally want to catch my prospect while they're at work. So Monday through Friday between 8 and 5, because that's when they're doing work things and making work decisions, and they're more likely to react to me and engage with me during that stretch of time. If I'm trying to sell that same person something that's recreational, I might still use a little bit of that time, but I more likely want to engage with them when they're thinking about recreation. So when they get off work at the end of the day, when it's the weekend, and then it's sort of defined by who they are, their age, their habits, all those kinds of things. And fortunately, we have great information now about that. you're being followed. Everything you do is followed and recorded.
Data is obnoxious.
Yeah, it is. It really, as a marketer, I believe it's gone way too far. But here's the danger of that for marketers is it makes us lazy. We tend to think because we can get in front of you anytime, anywhere through retargeting and all those digital tactics, that A, we should, right? Just because we can, we should. And B, all the time and energy goes into the delivery and very little into what am I delivering. And so think of it this way. When people watch the Super Bowl, a lot of them watch it as much for the commercials as for the game.
Absolutely.
If it's a bad game, the reason people hang in there is the commercials, right? So that level of creativity that always gets reserved for the Super Bowl should be the norm, because that's a big piece of our job, is to make our message so creative that people are talking about it the next day. I'll give you an example of that. We had a billboard. So this goes right back to your question, right? We are a business to business company.
Okay.
So typically you would think we're going to do very targeted marketing. But we also know that our clients are like everybody else. They're in cars and they're driving around. So we had a billboard on Interstate 65 for many years. And one of the messages we put on it once was brand aid. Just those two words, brand aid, in big letters, like the type on the Band-Aid box. So
right.
Typeface. And then I think it said adhesive marketing sticks stronger, lasts longer, or something. I can't remember exactly. Something along that line. Flash forward 3 or 4 years, billboard has been down for a long time. And I was still getting people who would call us to talk about a website or whatever it was. And when I'd say, how did you find out about us? They'd say, oh, I see your billboard all the time. Now, there isn't a billboard to see. But it's that memory chain thing, right? They got so used to seeing it. Yeah, they got so used to seeing it that as far as they're concerned, it's still there.
So when you look at the messaging itself, I heard, and I think this was an old speech of Simon Sinek. I was listening to it the other day, where he said that so often businesses focus on what they do, as opposed to looking as a target where the center is why, the next ring is how, and then finally you get to what.
Yeah, and if you have to think about it, part of the problem is you've got to think about it from the perspective of the person who's going to buy it, right?
Yes.
And that's what we don't do well at all anymore. The whole reason that gastroenterology campaign worked was we thought, what's the perspective of the person we're trying to reach? And the perspective of the person we're trying to reach is, I don't want what you sell. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. There's nothing about it I'm interested in. It's when I think about it, I think it's gross or disgusting or makes me uncomfortable, right? So let's play with that, right? Let's figure out a way to put them at ease about that, right? It's like going in, if you don't like needles and you're going in and they have to draw blood or give you a shot, and the person that's doing it kids around with you a little bit. You relax, and then it doesn't hurt as bad, right? Because your muscles aren't tense. So the ones who are good at it understand that really, really well. So there's a really good book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller out of Nashville. And the one of the key things he says in that book is focus on the customer's pain. Like, what a great question to ask to start your messaging journey is, what pain do we relieve? And pain comes in all kinds of forms, right? It could be, I have to, when I make an appointment with this dentist, I always sit in the waiting room for 45 minutes. Even though my appointment's at 9, I never get in to see anybody until 10. So that lost time is pain to them, right?
Right.
So, and in every industry, there are companies doing it well and companies doing it poorly. And so you want to deliver the pain either of the inflicted by the people doing it poorly, or the pain of not having what we offer, right? And so once you start thinking in terms of what is the pain, and how do we take that pain away, now you can start playing with the message in a way that's going to make sense to people. But it's all about talking about them and not about you.
Yes.
Always start about talking about them. You know, you're in a hurry, you're running late, and then this happens, and then this happens. Does that sound familiar? Well, we've got a thing that will takes all of that stress off of you, so you don't even have to worry about it. It's automated now, so never have to experience this again. Now you can use that time to do this, right? So it's all about that customer experience and how you're making their life better. And in fact, I would go one step farther. Anybody who's worked with me over the years has heard me say, our number one job above everything else, is to make our clients' lives easier.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not doing that, the rest of it's not going to matter. And we've run into this over and over again. I can't tell. For example, do you know that the number one reason, and research shows this all the time, the number one reason that companies switch agencies, apart from like the marketing director leaving and a new one comes in, is mistakes.
Sure.
Typos, missed deadlines, misspelling, poor punctuation, bad grammar, mistakes. Because the client doesn't have time to proofread work that is supposed to be in ship shape, and they shouldn't have to do that.
They shouldn't have.
Right? You're not telling your doctor, hey, you missed a place, right?
Well, in every business, their role should be to make their client's life easier. Why do you get carryout? Why do you go to a restaurant? Why do you bring your shirts to the cleaners? Why do you have someone else change the oil in your car?
Right.
People have lawn services. Why do all these services? Why are there grocery stores? Because people aren't planting, sowing, and harvesting.
Right.
They're not keeping cattle in their yard, for the most part,
by and large.
So Alan, we've gone amazingly almost 33 minutes in our 30-minute show. We're going to have you back another time.
Absolutely.
Because we did not dig into so much that I wanted to talk about. So thank you for being agreeable to come back another time. But final question, take the next two minutes and give people a primer on how to promote themselves.
As individuals or companies?
Your choice.
I'll give you an answer that I think would work for both, and that is become the expert. In whatever you do, become the expert and then prove your expertise. So become the expert is the working out at the gym part, right? There's no shortcut to it. There's no easy way to it. You have to read more than everybody else. You have to practice more than everybody else, right? You have to listen to more podcasts and watch more webinars than everybody else, and just gather more knowledge. So and just do it so often. The 10,000 hour rule, right? Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours equals an expert. So build expertise that nobody else has, a level of expertise that nobody else has, or expertise in an area that nobody else has really dove into, and then deliver that expertise every way you can. So what you do, for example, with your podcast, with blogs, with workshops, be a speaker, get published in trade journals, speak at national conferences. All of those kinds of things are far easier to do than I think people imagine.
Mm-hmm.
and B, they put you in the position of being seen as an expert, so that when somebody needs that thing that you do, they say, well, Sean does that all the time. We should call him.
I know this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's that memory chain thing, right? If they get your email or they read your blog or they listen to your podcast, whatever it is, you're building that nice, long, strong chain, and you're proving expertise. So I would say to any company and to any individual, own the expert position there. And again, there's a terrific book in that regard as well. That's a very quick read. It's such a quick read that you'll want to read it 3 or 4 times because it's also deep, by a guy named David Baker. Interestingly, also out of Nashville, Tennessee, called The Business of Expertise. And he literally breaks apart how, step by step, how you do all of the things I just talked about. So it's very, very good.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much for being on the show today. Definitely we'll have you back again. You are a wealth of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge.
Thank you. I look forward to talking again.
Awesome. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We were a little late, but we still got the full show in. Have a blessed day, and we'll be back tomorrow talking to someone else